Welcome to Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, the podcast dedicated to focusing on the truth that is always evolving within us and around us, where we explore the potentiality of truth as a highly esteemed value at a time in history when most people have more on their plates than any one human should. If you're new to me, full expression is my jam. Some words people have used to describe me range from speaker, trainer, coach, healer, writer, spiritual advisor, teacher, podcaster, and someone even called me their soul Sherpa once. I'm less concerned with titles or labels and more interested in results, change, and creating a world we want to, can, and are proud to live in. A kinder, gentler, more curious, collaborative, reverent world where people respect each other's backgrounds, experiences, and truths. They trust in themselves, in life, and recognize that we need each other. And they know how to cultivate healthy relationships to true power, not the very unhealthy kind of power our current culture is predicated upon. Speaking of our culture, there's a lot of noise and ignorance in our current culture, and this show aims to cut through that by exploring the truths of a diverse range of incredible voices. From authors, artists, creatives, and educators to activists, speakers, and those in various scientific and esoteric fields, our guests hail from cultures and countries all over the world. We post a new interview every Monday, and if you want to keep up with the show notes and quotes from our guests, you can follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth D'Alto. You can expect a wide range of topics when you tune into this show. Everything from health, communication, money, success, parenting, desire, sex, love, and spirituality, to making pivots and transitions in life, and topics related to psychology, storytelling, gender and race issues, emotional intelligence, activism, advocacy, and much more. A few disclaimers. No episode of the show is meant for everyone, and every episode is meant for whoever needs it on the right day at the right time. Not all guest views will reflect my own, and that's intentional. We don't learn, grow, heal, or improve by staying in our comfortable bubbles with all of our people who look, think, or live exactly how we do. If you love what you hear and find it useful and inspiring, the best way to show your appreciation is to share the episode, subscribe to the show, and leave us a rating and review wherever you listen in from. Thank you so much for being here with me. Here we go. Welcome to episode number 292 of Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto. Today we are jamming on the power of love. February is upon us, Valentine's Day is coming, and it just felt appropriate to talk about love. We might get into romantic love, we might not, and the reason why I say might is because I have two notes here of what I want to talk about, and everything else will be a riff. So before we dive into the episode, I want to let you all know that from February 11th to February 14th, I'm having a love sale on Wild Soul Movement weekend workshops. So since Valentine's Day is February 14th, we're 214 on the calendar. Instead of $399 for weekend workshops, you can grab one for just $214. You save $185. That is almost half price, y'all. That is unheard of. I've never discounted them this much, but that is my love offering for the month. So there will be a discount code. I will post it everywhere on social media. If you follow me on Instagram or on Facebook, everything is at Elizabeth D'Alto. I will also announce the code on next Monday's episode if you're listening in real time on February 11th. Which, by the way, I'm so excited about. Some of you who listen regularly have heard me talk about the book Deeper Dating, which changed my whole dating life, my whole love life last year. And I got to interview the author, Ken Page. And instantly, that interview became my all-time favorite, period. And this is episode number 292. I have done a lot of interviews in the last almost 4 years here. So it's a really beautiful episode. I cried in the middle. Ken finally gives us language that we can use instead of saying masculine and feminine around that conversation. I was so excited about that. So that's going to be an epic episode next week. It's episode number 293. And that day, February 11th, will kick off the Wild Soul Movement Weekend Workshop sale. And I'm telling you ahead of time so you can mark your calendars. You have 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that week. So if you want to come see me, you want to come meet me, you want to be in a room with other wild soul women and women identifying folks, you can sign up for a workshop next week and save some big bucks. We have 11 going on throughout the course of the year. I recently canceled the Los Angeles one for a couple different reasons, which I don't need to get into, but so there's 11 others to choose from. All right, y'all. So let's get into this love episode. I have to tell you a story. And it's the story of yesterday. At the time I'm recording this on January 29th. And yesterday, Monday the 28th, I don't know what the hell was going on in the cosmos or something. And also me personally, listen, whenever I refer to astrology, whether I'm doing it on social media or I mention it here, I'm doing it always, not even with a grain of salt, with like a 25-pound bag of salt. Because, of course, we all have personal things going on in our lives, in our own energy fields, in our own mental, physical, emotional landscapes, in our own relationships. So I'm never like blaming the cosmos. But it was interesting because I did post something on Facebook yesterday saying, man, I really wish that, grief and trauma spells would consult my Google Calendar and avoid the busy days. But apparently they are not integrating into this digital world in this way. And so many people commented on my post that they had like an abnormally funky day as well. So something hit me in the afternoon. I don't even really know what it was. I was having an incredible morning. For those of you that are following the WSM 333 thing that I'm doing on Instagram, after December when I did the embodiment challenge, I decided that I was going to post movement and embodiment videos on Instagram 333 out of 365 days this year. And so sometimes I'll dance, sometimes I'll stretch or do wild soul movement. But yesterday morning, I was queuing up a Puerto Rico playlist because I'm actually going to Puerto Rico this week. I'm going to take my dad. We're going to hang out with our family. And part of the purpose of that trip is to really reclaim my own roots, is to get up in the very rich culture that makes up half of my lineage here in this lifetime and spend some time with my family, get to know my family. I've been to Puerto Rico several times, but I've never gone just to like be in the culture, learn about the island, learn about the history, and get to know my family better. I don't see them that often. My abuelita lived in New York for many years when I was little, but after high school, after her mother passed away, she moved back to Puerto Rico. And when she moved back, a lot of the access to the culture through her that was present in my life was then gone. And I took salsa lessons over the years. I became a Zumba instructor. Like there was always this yearning and desire to connect with that culture. And so I'm excited to just go and be on the island and be with my people. So, and this episode is about the power of love. And for me, that is an enormous act of self-love because that's in my blood. That's my family. That's my culture. We have a lot of conversations on the podcast now about culture, cultural appropriation. We talk about race and we talk about identities and navigating marginalization and dominant culture and dominant groups and things like this. And in a lot of ways, I have allowed myself to be whitewashed and I've contributed to my own whitewashing. And I haven't really identified as a woman of color for most of my life, but I am a woman of color. I'm half Puerto Rican. So this is a lot about going and loving on an aspect of me and learning about and embracing and embodying an aspect of me that I haven't, that I've largely denied or not felt worthy of or judged myself. I don't know. There's so much wrapped up in it for me. So this is a big act of self-love, as well as getting to take a trip with my dad. Family relationships are so interesting. If you have both of your parents together, for me, my parents have been separated, divorced, and then actually remarried each other. And so there were times in my life where I got to have individual relationships with my parents. But as an adult, it's something that I realize I really want, I really crave to know my parents as individuals and spend some time with them. And, they're two very, very different people. And also, two halves of me. So getting to, in a lot of ways, this is about being with people and being with culture, but also about being with myself and seeing myself reflected in those things and exploring different identities. So I'm really excited about that. And I don't know if that is something that you experience or that you explore. And I know everyone's relationships to families and parents are quite different. Maybe they were present in your life, maybe they weren't. This was coming up in the Power 2019 group last week around people who had not spent much time with their parents in their life, and especially in their adult lives, and just recognizing like some of their patterns and their habits and their behaviors, regardless of how much time they spent with their parents, still came from their families of origin. So there's this interesting aspect of love that is acceptance. And beyond acceptance, and Ken Page talks about this in next week's interview, beyond acceptance, there's cherishing. But acceptance is a really big first step, and that's a really big part of love. Whether we're loving ourselves, loving life, the world, others, a situation, an experience, our bodies, our minds, our talents, our gifts, there's so much to love in the world. So I'm going to tell you the story of yesterday. I went on a big tangent. So yesterday was a rough day. Like the afternoon hit, something just overtook me. And those of you who have trauma or grief that you work through or that is, present in your life, even if it's not, big. I've worked through a lot of trauma the last couple of years, and it's not ever present, but some days it's just like, woof. My friend Rachel Maddox calls this a trauma spell. And that's what happened to me yesterday. Something hit me and it was just like, it took over. Suddenly, I just felt like I wanted to break things and cry. And I eat relatively on an intermittent fasting schedule, so I hadn't eaten lunch yet. And I didn't really have food in my house, so I decided to go to a local market here called Erewhon in LA in Venice Beach to go grab a salad or something. And as I was on my way there, I was just like, I was feeling the term that I was hearing in my mind was bone-crushing loneliness. And I was like, wow, that is dramatic, but it is true in this moment. And so I just let it be. This is something in terms of self-love and self-care that I really deeply practice, which is just being with what I feel, honoring it, not trying to escape it, get out of it or bypass it. I'll breathe it in. I will take really deep breaths in an effort to open my body and create space in my body so that the emotions and that the feelings and the sensations can pass. They can flow through like a wave in the ocean, which is a metaphor I've used before on the show. And I know other people use this metaphor as well, and it's highly relatable because they pass. They always pass. And when we clench up and when we constrict, they can get stuck, right? And so I always try to breathe or move my body or do something to help it pass, help it move through or move out or feel it more, feel it deeper, which sometimes that's kind of scary. So I was feeling this bone-crushing loneliness and just like all these things. And I cried a little, but it wasn't really about crying. And so as I was getting out of my car, this Erewhon Market is a place where I often run into people I know. And so I said a little prayer and I was like, hey, angels, I need some earth angels. I need to see some people I know. I need a hug. Please send me some earth angels today. And it was interesting because I did end up seeing someone I knew, not someone I knew really well or who I would even consider a friend, but just someone I met like once at this like beach sunset dance thing. And she was this super fun woman, like this little spritey kind of fairy woman, but who also had this incredible primal energy. And I was loving watching her dance. And I saw her and that instantly, it raised my mood. I was happy to see her. And then I came home, I had work to do, and I got on the floor because I just needed to feel grounded. I needed to feel grounded. And so I had gone to the store, I got some, this calendar thing, some Post-its. Office supplies always make me feel better. And I was organizing my calendar and I just got on the floor. I got the computer on the floor. That instantly made me feel better. That was soothing to me. But then once I was on the floor, I was able to feel a little bit better, but also just, say to myself, hey, like, I have things I need to get done today. So I'm not going to bypass these feelings. I'm not going to pretend I don't feel them, but I also need to work. So I'm going to work here. We're going to do both. We're going to do both at the same time. And again, in terms of the power of love, to me, this is an expression of love. To not abandon myself in my own moments of need, but to also not abandon my responsibilities and the things that I need to get done. And I didn't get everything done yesterday. And I also didn't beat myself up about that. I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do what I could do. And then I'm going to rest. And then I'm going to do more. And then I'm going to rest. But what was also interesting about yesterday was in the morning when I woke up, after, I did my little morning routines that I do and I opened my email, there was this email. And I didn't even know how I got on this email list. And there was an event that was close by in Venice, and it was called Talk Nerdy to Me. And the featured guests were Delia and Andy, the founders of an organization called Orphaned Starfish Foundation. And what caught me about it is the woman, her name is Christina Weber, who hosts this event, was talking about how, these two, are her like relationship goals. This is a couple whose love, makes the world better. And I was like, ooh, I would like that inspiration in my life right now. So let me go. I'm going to go to this thing. And I'll be super honest. I was a little reluctant because some of you have heard me talk about my time living in North County, San Diego, and Encinitas and Carlsbad. And there were a lot of events that I would go to that were hosted by, quote, like conscious spiritual, kind of new agey type folks, super light washed, super whitewashed. I never really felt like I fit in. A lot of spiritual bypass. And I didn't love those events. And this event kind of looked like it had the potential to be like that. But I was like, all right, I'm going to go. I could always leave if I need to leave. And I didn't know why. Like, I kind of knew, all right, let me go be around this magical couple. Great. Get some inspiration, some love inspiration, some romantic love inspiration. But something just really, it was like locked in. It was like, I need to go to this thing. That was very clear to me. And as I was on my way home from Erewhon, I got my salad. I felt better. I saw that magical woman. I didn't feel totally better. I just felt like marginally better, like a tiny bit, like 1% better. And that was before I came home and got on the floor. And I was thinking about my friend Phil. And then like 10 minutes later, Phil texted me. He was sending me a podcast he was listening to and just like catching up a little bit. And I was like, hey, I'm going to this thing tonight. I don't know if you'd be interested. And I sent it to him. And he's like, yeah, let me see. Let me get to the end of my workday and kind of feel out whether or not it makes sense. He ended up coming. And so that was great because I got to see my buddy. I got to get some quality hugs from a close friend. But I get to this event, and the person whose home it was in is this woman named Mason. And Mason is this incredible musician, like so talented, blows me away. Music is a form of art that really blows me away, cracks my heart open, especially live, because to me, it's like I don't sing well. And so to me, it feels like one of the most vulnerable expressions. And I'm always just like, I get instant goosebumps. And Mason plays the violin and she sings and her voice is very soulful and she moves. And, she's really another, just, I'm using the generalized word magical, really magical human being. And I had met her when I was in San Diego. And at the time she was a traveling artist and she had this van, this beautiful, like, fairy van palace kind of thing that she lived in. It was really beautiful. And, I walked into this house and I looked around and I'm like, and then I saw her and I'm like, oh, of course. She took the van and turned it into an apartment. There were fairy lights everywhere and drapes and beautiful pillows and all these cool things. And I was really excited to see her and reconnect with her as well. So remember my prayer earlier for some earth angels. I was like, all right, the earth angels are coming. So I was happy to see Mason. I was happy to be in her place. And then Delia and Andy started talking about their Orphaned Starfish Foundation. And they were talking about they live a nomadic lifestyle. They only spend about 40 days out of the year in the U.S. And all the other days of the year, they're traveling. They have orphanages in 27 countries, over 13,000 children. And these orphanages existed. They didn't build the orphanages, but what they have built, what their foundation has built are technology centers. And they go and they help educate these children. Often little girls who otherwise would be sex trafficked if they didn't get an education and if there wasn't like another pathway, if there wasn't another route out once they turn 18 and they leave the orphanage, you know? And so they were talking about their experiences. They were sharing a lot about how these children are traumatized and sexually abused and sold literally from birth in some cases. Some of the stories were really hard to hear and such incredible perspective. The other day in the Power 2019 group, a woman was sharing about some pain and an injury she was experiencing and how she felt guilty for even like talking about it because she had a relative who had a much more significant illness. And one of the things I shared with her is that there's no hierarchy of pain or trauma. Everything is relative. What we experience is our experience. What might be the most traumatic thing in my life might be very mild compared to what someone else has experienced. But, there's no real point in comparing our traumas to other people's and deciding that, we should or we shouldn't feel a certain way because someone else has had a worse experience. However, there's a distinction here, which is the perspective. So as Delia and Andy were talking about how these children are treated and their lived experiences of literally, in some cases, being, sexually abused as infants and toddlers, in some cases, to much, much worse. I'm not going to go into the details here because it's not necessary to potentially really trigger anyone who's listening who has sexual trauma. But just the perspective. And then these children, and often it's their parents that are doing it or selling them or whatever, and it's all they've ever known. And they don't even know in some cases that they're people. They just know that this is what they are used for. Their function is this thing. And so just the perspective of truly how fortunate we are here. The things that we have access to, even those who are abused and who, have horrendous experiences with families of origin or other people or other adults or even in childhood. And it was just reminding me of how much so many of us have and how often when we're on these healing journeys, learning how to love ourselves and trust ourselves and accept ourselves, we are often focused on what we don't have or what we didn't have. And it's an important part of the process. And by the way, I'm in my apartment recording this and they're vacuuming out in the hallway. So if you hear the background noise, that's what that is. And I can't do anything about it. So I left feeling so appreciative for these people, for the work that they do. And also really appreciative that we're all so different. And we are all called to a different kind of love and a different kind of service in the world. I could not do the work that Delia and Andy do. That's not my work to do. But I was thinking about how it could inform the work that I do. And one of the things that I appreciated so much about them, that I was so inspired by, I was like, oh my goodness, these are the earth angels that I was praying for earlier today, because my friend Phil actually asked them. His question was, my heart, I'm hearing these and I'm wanting to keep my heart open. And because they told us several stories that were very hard to hear of, how these children are abused and traumatized. And he's like, how do you not shut down? How do you go be in these spaces, with these kids? And it's literally all they're doing. They're like traveling from place to place to place and being with group after group after group after group. In some cases there's so much poverty or corruption in the towns, and like they have to be so culturally sensitive so that they don't endanger themselves or the children, depending on where they're going. And I loved Delia's response. She just said, all these kids are my kids. Andy and I don't have children together because we have 13,000 children. I just love them and they love you back. And it's just this, and when she was saying that, I was seeing like this infinity loop, this infinity symbol. And I was just like, it's so reciprocal. They're just giving and receiving love. They're just giving and receiving love. They're going and being with these children. And they're like, all it takes is one little girl to run up to you and hug you and tell you she loves you. And then you melt and you're there and you're in, and the capacity, it's not an issue of capacity because it's just love and it's family. And even these children in these orphanages, she was saying, they might not have their own family. She was like, imagine not having like a single person in the world to call your own. But then, they're in these orphanages and this becomes their family. Not to idealize it, not to paint it as a perfect picture, but she's like, there is family and there is community, and there really is so much love. And these kids have so much love. And so that really just blew me open to the power of love, the power of giving and receiving what we have to give, and receiving what is there, what's always available right in front of us, no matter what the context is. And the reason why these people, Delia and Andy, they weren't burned out is because they're constantly giving and receiving love. They're constantly giving and receiving love in the forms of generosity, providing education, just being there, spending time with these kids. She was telling the story of being at one place, I forget the location, and it was an older girl, and she noticed this girl had all these cuts on her arms. And so, after they were done doing what they were doing, she grabbed the girl's arm, not aggressively, and she said, "Hey, you see this? I don't want you to do this anymore. I love you, and I don't want you to hurt yourself." And then some of the other kids had surrounded, and they were like, "Yeah, like, we love you. Please don't do that anymore." And, from that day forward, that girl never did that anymore. She said, "I won't. I promise I won't. Thank you." She just needed to know that she was loved and that she was cared for. And I really left that evening last night thinking about and feeling into how we love each other. And so some of you may or may not know this. I am a huge Jimi Hendrix fan. I have been since I was very young. And there's this Jimi Hendrix quote that I think about a lot that says, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. And I love that. And of course, in that context, power is like this kind of power we see here in the US, right? Like the Donald Trump kind of power, the power over, the domination, the better than, the hierarchy, you understand what I'm saying, right? All of the different unhealthy, inappropriate power that in order to sustain itself has to put other people down. Whereas love is the power. Love is the freaking power. And so, I don't know if any of you have ever had an experience like this, where you hear such a moving story, or you hear about people's work in the world like Delia and Andy, who are helping all of these children, and immediately feel like, oh my goodness, I need to do that, or I need to do more, or I need to get educated about this. I need to learn about the children, or I need to do something about poverty. And we also have an episode coming up. It's going up. It won't be till March, actually, with Shivani Hawkins. But one of the things that we talk about in that interview was, we all have our own work to do, and we can't all do all of the things, right? But there are people who are in those lanes that, like there's the Delia and Andys who are doing this work with these children. There's the people who are fighting for the oceans and for the earth and for the planet. And there are the activists and the social justice warriors. And, we as individuals can only do so much. And also we need to do what we can do, right? Max out our capacities without burning ourselves out, honor ourselves, but also, what is our contribution? Where are we able to be generous? What are, the issues or the causes that really call us in the highest? And how can we show up fully to those? And then when we can, offer and lend support to the others, to our brothers and sisters who are doing all their other amazing work in the world, for love and for liberation and, for feeding people in whatever way people need to be fed, right? So, but one of the other things that really struck me is this concept of family. And I have been thinking about this a lot lately as I've had some stuff going on with my own family that, there's our family, our blood family that we're born into, and then there's our chosen family, there's our soul family. There are the people who we meet, and some of them are our friends, and some of them are our lovers, and some of them are our clients and our communities and our coworkers. And, there's family everywhere. There's family everywhere. And there are all these ideas of what we think family should look like. And we lament and we grieve, perhaps not having the family experience that is sold to us and portrayed to us in books and movies and stories as like, quote, the ideal family, which I think especially here in the US is very like, there's a mom and there's a dad and there's some brothers and sisters and, there's a home and everyone lives happily ever after. That's so not the case for so many people. And for some people, they do have that. And it's a beautiful thing. And so when Delia was saying, like, these kids are my family, I treat everyone. She said the sentence, I just treat everyone like they're my family. I've always been that way. And I had a moment of realizing that I don't treat everyone like they're my family, but there's a lot of people, like my community, you all. When I'm on Instagram and I'm responding to my DMs and even here on the podcast as I'm thinking about all of you out there wherever you are, you all are my family. I love you. When I say I love you, like I friggin' mean that I love you. I don't need to know you. I don't need to meet you to know that I love you. When women come into Wild Soul Movement weekend workshops and they hug me and they start crying, I'm like, this makes a lot of sense. We have spent a lot of time together here as you listen to the podcast, as we grow together. When I get these like encyclopedia length DMs in my Instagram of people telling me this podcast episode helped me do this, or just listening, this has helped me heal, grow, get through this really hard time. It all makes sense. Like this is my work. This is my offering in the world. And I love you. And you all are my family. And there have been times, and we talk about this in the Ken Page interview, because one of the things from his book, Deeper Dating, is that our greatest gifts reside in the same place as our deepest wounds. And one of my deepest wounds is around having an enormous heart and an enormous capacity for love and a willingness to give that love and this generosity that is not always reciprocated, that I have in some cases just given away to, for lack of a better way of describing it, the wrong people. Or people who couldn't receive it, or people who couldn't reciprocate. And I have been drained and depleted in some cases. I have drained and depleted and overgiven myself and been so hurt when it wasn't returned or when I felt rejected. And so, this work and my work and what I do, this is one of the places where I get to be so generous and I get to pour my love into this. And you all feel that. Those of you who feel that resonance with my particular way of loving on you and giving my love and infusing my love in things. So, and you have your own expression of that too, right? Whether it's your work or your local family or your organizations or your places that you volunteer or your own family, whatever it is. And that really, so that like reverberated in my system, I get to treat everyone like they're my family. I just get to love people because I love people. And that's that. Even people who are in pain, even people who have hurt me, even people who've mistreated me, I get to love them. I don't have to be close to them. I don't have to live with them or near them or spend time with them. I don't have to take or tolerate poor treatment. I can still have love for people in a way that's not a bypass, in a way that's just the truth of my own heart. So this is part of the power of love, is you get to love whoever you want to love. And you also get to choose how you want to interact with those who you love. You have so much love to give in your own unique and beautiful, amazing way. And whether that's in service to the world, creativity, art. The last couple of years, I've really gotten into poetry. And poetry teaches me how to love all the time. Naira Waid, Rumi, Hafez, some of these mystic poets, Rupi Kaur, some of these poets who I have discovered on Instagram. I will not call them Instagram poets because they are real legit poets who happen to post their poetry on Instagram. And in some cases, that's how it spreads. But I hope as you're listening to this, it really is kind of much more of like a riff or a transmission or just like a cosmic blurt out. But I hope you are feeling activated, inspired, motivated, open to exploring your own giving and receiving, that infinity loop in your own life of giving and receiving love. Where is it that you can pour love in, that love pours back into you simply by nature of being there and doing that? That's really something that I just kept thinking about over and over again as Delia and Andy were talking about. Like they aren't burned out because, again, that love is sustaining them. And listen, y'all, we live in this highly, highly digital world where a lot of what we're doing is online. A lot of our engagement and interaction with people is online. And so how do we be in rooms with people? How do we share love in person and in real life? Because we need to feel each other. We need to be, heartbeat to heartbeat, nervous system to nervous system, eye to eye. We need to be able to hug people. We need to be able to just be in proximity, to like breathe the same air. This world is set up for a lot of isolation. Even, I think about, I live in an apartment building. One of the reasons I moved back into an apartment building was because where I was living before, I was super isolated out in Malibu. And I was like, I just want to be around people. And so, but even in my apartment building, like I come into my own apartment, it's not like every once in a while I run into someone in the elevator or in the garage or in the hallway. It's still so interesting. It's like there are people so close. Like there's literally people on the other sides of these walls, but I'm not with them. So I think about that a lot. So the power of love. What is the power of love in your own life right now? How do you need to give and receive love in your own life right now? What's the divine love? What's the way that you connect with and embrace or embody like divine love? Whether that is God, the universe, angels, whatever it is. What do you connect with in the spiritual realm? That kind of love. Because that's like the most infinite kind of love that there is. Last weekend I went to, I've been working with the Akashic Records for the last several months. And I wanted to go to the training to learn how to read the records myself. And one of the reasons I wanted to is actually because even when I get Akashic Records readings, it's not like a healing session. That's technically not like getting energy work done, like Reiki or like the energy mastery that I'm trained in or other forms of energy work that I've experienced before. But I always noticed that after those readings, I would just feel immensely blessed. Like I had been bathed in like I can't describe it in any other way than like just like God's love. And I was like, there's something about being in that field. And it's a field of love. So there's another way to consider it. Like these different fields of love, these energy fields of love, or these pockets of love. Maybe you get it at your church if you go to a church, or again, there's a community or an organization or a group, or maybe there's art that you do, or maybe it's your family or certain people or groups of friends or a class that you go to. Maybe it's a yoga class or a Zumba class, or like, who knows? But I mean, love is literally like everywhere. It's in the fabric of this world that we live in. It's in the air that we breathe. And so are other things, right? Like not everything is love. We'll hear these quotes. Only love is real. That one is hard to wrap a mind and brain around sometimes. But there's also, and I don't know the origin of it, but I heard it from our former podcast guest, Latham Thomas, many, many years ago. She said, love is always the appropriate response. And I'll go back to this, being at this thing last night. So, I'm a human being. I can be judgy just like anyone else. And when I sat down in this space, there was a man who was sitting not that far away from me who was like meditating. And he was doing this mudra, and he was like really deep, like breathing very loudly. And for like a hot second, I was about to judge this guy. Like, oh, here we go. Ultra spiritual guy, needs everyone to know he's meditating. Like, and that literally lasted 2 seconds. I'm like, who cares? I'm like, maybe that's what that guy needs to do, actually, to be in this room right now. Maybe he's having a hell of a day like I am. And this is him just being able to show up. And so like that was the loving response. The loving response was to be like, whatever, this dude's doing what he needs to do. I don't need to know. I don't know anything about this guy. You know, I could just drop my judgment, drop my need to think it's stupid or silly or some kind of performance, because I literally do not know what experience that man is having right now. So love is always the appropriate response. That's the power of love. And at the same time, I think about things like boundaries. We still need to have boundaries, right? So there's a distinction that I've been considering a lot lately. Some of you who follow me on Instagram might have seen this experience a couple weeks ago. It's still highlighted in my stories under boundaries, where someone gave me a piece of unsolicited feedback. I responded, and then this whole conversation around unsolicited advice and feedback ensued. And one of the things to me that was the most fascinating was one person's comment who said, oh my goodness, I've actually really distanced myself from my family, and I don't share much with them anymore because they always give me unsolicited advice. And I feel so frustrated. They don't listen to me. They don't understand me. They don't hear me. They just want to be right. They just want to give me their opinion. They just want to give me their 2 cents. And it's so uncomfortable and it hurts so much. I just don't tell them things anymore. And so I've been thinking a lot about these distinctions around unsolicited advice and feedback because, sometimes it's necessary, Like if we see someone causing harm, doing harm, hurting someone, or if someone's hurting us or causing us harm, it might be unsolicited to say, hey, this thing you're doing right now, that's not okay. But we need to speak up in the face of harm and hurt and damage and abuse. And that never needs to be solicited because that's always warranted. But when it's unnecessary and unwarranted is when we're invading each other's lived experiences. When we're giving people advice they didn't need, giving people feedback or opinions they didn't ask for. In a way, what we're doing is positioning ourselves as knowing better than they do, or having something to prove, or needing to be right, or needing to be superior, or validate ourselves or our own life choices. For example, the other day I saw someone comment on a friend's post telling them that they should really start having kids. This couple is in their mid to late 30s. And they were like, you two would be amazing parents. You need to start thinking about having kids. It gets harder as you get closer to 40. And the post that this person left this comment on had nothing to do with family planning or children or life choices. And I was like, wow, what the hell? What makes people think that that's an okay thing to do? And what does this have to do with love? It is very unloving to impose your own thoughts, beliefs, opinions, feedback, advice on those who haven't asked. And again, the distinction is these people aren't out there causing harm. They're sharing their own experience. They're having their own experience. And someone's coming in and encroaching on them with their own advice, with their own feedback, their own opinion. And it's condescending, y'all. It's patronizing. It's saying to someone, I think I know better than you do. And often it's coming from a place of insecurity under the guise of, I'm just trying to help. But it's not helpful. And it's not loving. And it's not honoring other people's sovereignty. And that people are having their experience that they're having. And that they, of course, know themselves better than we could possibly know them, especially when it's a stranger on the internet. And it's more challenging when it's people we know and love and we can actually see them acting out their patterns and habits and things like this. But how could we just be there for people? Listen, ask. And by the way, if you see something and you want to say something, just ask. Hey, I'm noticing something. I'd like to share it with you, but is that even helpful? Do you want to hear it? Just ask permission. Consent. Consent is so loving. Hey, is this okay with you? Hey, not attached to your response to this, but I'm noticing something. Or, ooh, I have My intuition is pinging me about something. Would you like to hear it? Totally cool if you don't want to. And I say no to that sometimes, people. Hey, I have a hunch. And I'll be like, no, I'm good. Thank you. Because I just don't need the distraction. If I'm in the process of learning how to love and trust and accept myself, I don't need other people dumping their stuff or consideration into my process. So we went on an exploration of all different aspects and expressions and experiences of love in this episode. While I bounced around, the through thread is the power of love and the different ways that we can love ourselves and love others and be with ourselves and be with others. So I hope you got anything out of this. As always, you can find me on Instagram at Elizabeth D'Alto. Send me a message, share the episode, share it with your friends. Remember, next week, I'm having that sale on the Wild Soul Movement Weekend workshops. The link for those is wildsoulmovement.com/workshops. So I would, ahead of time, go check out the locations, check out the dates, look at your calendar, see which one you'd want to come to. I would love to meet you in person. We can have that loving experience of being in the same room together with other wild soul women, which is always amazing. This is episode number 292. So the show notes will be at untameyourself.com/292, along with links, anything I mentioned in the show. So the Orphan Starfish Foundation, anything else that I mentioned or referenced that is linkable will be linked up over there, along with some quotes for your consideration, or if you want to share or whatever. We put a lot of juicy things over at those show notes. As well, if you would like to receive, I always forget to tell people, we send out a weekly email every Monday when the podcast goes out with links and resources and all these things. So if you want to receive that email, you can go to wildsoulmovement.com/podcast and get on that specific email list. And that's it, y'all. I do love you. Happy Valentine's month. Appreciate you all. Thank you for listening. I would love to know what you thought about this episode. So we're wrapping it up here. I'll see you later.
So many times, if you're working at a job, not everyone needs to know everything that's going on with you,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so those people, it had nothing to do with what they needed to know. However, it was challenging at times because when you're in that position, people, I walk around with a wedding ring on my finger and people never hear about, or, never see pictures of the husband and all this stuff. And so there were inquiries like, okay, well, especially we want to invite you all for Christmas dinner, like those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
So there were times where there were people who I would not have gone if he wasn't there, right? And so for me, it wasn't as critical until the time came where I knew that I wanted to build my thing.